Well, welcome back here to the Crash Investigator, and today I'm going to have a look at a very sad accident. Well, they're all sad. All right, but this one was in the Cessna 172 on the first night flying sortie in the circuit on turning final. They impacted with a tree, and obviously that was fatal to the student and the instructor. After many months, I imagine that he recovered from his injuries. Nonetheless, let's carry on. Just a reminder to say that I'm working with the SEAMS aircraft auditing as well as SEAMS training. And just a reminder that there's a lot of online courses there. And here I've mentioned crew resource management and then obviously accident investigation. So if you want to become an accident investigator, that is where you go. But back now to the Cessna 172, the fatal crash, as I said, during the night. Very tragic, but there is a little bit of history, and I'm sure there's a lot that we can learn from this. All right, so let's see. First of all, let's go through it. On turning final, and I'll have the bigger pictures. This is a tree here that they hit. There it is in relation to, there the aircraft landed, and there's the threshold of the aircraft, or the landing spot 03. And then just the picture here at night, what it looked like when it... Now that's why it's such a tragedy, is that it was in the circuit, it's normal circuitry training, and. So there are so many questions, but the result, well, very tragic. All right, so a little bit of the history. Now the student, a lady, she had a PPL license. She unfortunately died in the crash. But then for 6 months she didn't fly, and that was necessarily due to COVID. And she then did a type conversion on the Cessna 172. Now, already, remember, when you read that she has done that, you don't get the information what she has flown before. You don't know anything about any other recencies. And I also see in the report they're talking about her as the flying pilot, which is not the case. She's a student. The flying pilot, by definition, is the one flying at the time. An instructor might be flying, the student may be flying at the time, but the definitions are, according to me, not 100% right. Okay, so she then had a 1.7 hour conversion onto the Cessna 172, and a week later, she did her first night flying sortie, and that's the important part. All right, so we had a PPL, we built some hours after that, we sit on the ground for 6 months because of COVID, we now get airborne, we do Cessna 172 conversion, 1.7 hours. Well, it's possible, there's nothing wrong with that, but then, right after that, very first night flying sortie, but now the instructor that had to fly with her, he became sick, and it was not possible for that instructor to be there that night, so they actually called in the standby instructor. Now, what then happened is that on the third circuit, this is the accident that happened. And there's, I think, too much speculation about that. Although the information is not that much forthcoming yet. All right, but they did establish that they went through the tree, and after that there was a bank angle of 30 degrees. All right, but we'll use that information as we can. Here's just a bigger picture of the whole area, the airfield, and they were coming downwind, and this was the idea to turn in there. Now, there's a lot of probabilities, and please take note that I'm saying probabilities. I'm not saying this is what happened. Okay, so there's a lot of probabilities, and a lot of the probabilities you can take away, but a lot of the things that I think that was decided it happened, I can't see that it was founded by something strong enough to say that this was the case, but never mind. All right. It was night recency of the instructor That was a little bit of a problem because remember, everybody sat on the ground for that long time. The aircraft was, there's no indication that the pilot himself, the instructor, what was his night hours? You may have a lot of hours, but how many of those hours are night hours? And how recently have you done that? So those were questions of which I could not find information, to come to a reasonable answer. Okay, too low during final onto 03. Well, that is not a deduction. That is a fact because we can see that the aircraft went through the tree and then it struck the ground. All right, so there's no query about this one. It is speculated that the glide approach or a similar engine failure on low downwind. Wow, this is a little bit disturbing to me because on the very first night flying sortie, on the third circuit, we are doing engine cuts. Really? Or we are doing low-level circuits. Really? Or we are doing glide approaches. Really? All of these does not make sense in the world of instruction where I come from. All right. So there must be more to it. But I don't know because I obviously haven't done the investigation. The tree not visible, and the board or the inspectors who had a look at it, they couldn't understand that the landing lights was on and the tree was there, and why couldn't the people on board see the tree? All that I say to you is that if you sit in a high wing, like a Cessna 172, you've got 30 degrees bank on, all that you can see on your left-hand side is a big fat wing covering up the space where you are flying to 100%. All right. So it's not a question why they didn't see it. Would rather say, but what were they doing there at that height at that time? The fact that they could not see through the wing, I mean, that is as obviously as anything. But remember, you need to have flown these things to actually know this. The student is very fresh on the 172 and could have made plenty errors. And that's why I've got a problem. We can't talk about the pilot flying as if that's now somebody. No, the instructor is the pilot. The other person is not qualified for night flying. So you can't call that person any kind of pilot. That person is a student. All right. But nonetheless, I said that she had very few hours. In other words, I can deduce from there, sitting on the ground for 6 months, flying 1.7 hours on conversion, now the third circuit. Man, it's such a lot. It's mind-blowing. Okay, all right. The student error correction kept the instructor distracted and occupied. Well, that is quite a possibility because I know, then this is wrong, then this is wrong, and this is wrong. And you expect that to be wrong. Remember, I've got no beef with the student because the student is not supposed to be 100% perfect. Otherwise, instructors would need to know, or there wouldn't have been a need for us. All right. I'm just saying that if you're that green, and I know the first night sorties. Come on, guys. The first night sortie. Eyes are this big. You don't know what is happening. Low downwind, well, I said the initiation for the base leg. In the board or in the preliminary findings that they said that they established that the aircraft did low-level circuits. They didn't give the information why they thought that. Now, you can't say because I saw something on a camera that was flying there and there and there. You cannot. Because if the aircraft was on a wider downwind, it would have looked lower. If there was aircraft in the air where there was specifically mentioned by radio, I'm doing a 500 feet circuit, yes, then I can understand. There were other people in there, but the right questions were not asked. So to decide that it was a low-level circuit, we need a little bit more. I'm not saying that it is not the case, but I'm saying that based on what? That's why there's so many probabilities. All right. Downwind base to final, instructor did not intervene when the student was slow in correcting the wrong rate of D. Now, at this stage of the game, the whole premises that we are taking as fact is that the lady was flying. The student was flying. I don't know. Who says the student was not being given a demonstration? That wouldn't have been strange in the third circuit. Maybe the pilot did want to do a low-level circuit because, he quickly wanted to get, because she was struggling with the landing phase, and he wanted to get on the landing phase. That's possible. But then say that. But then you can't say that she, the student, would have flown the 500 feet circuit. I don't buy that. Sorry. All right, never mind. Now, what lessons do we take away? And there's quite a few, and I think we should pay serious attention. The instructor's night recency, I still query that. Now, there was also a story, and there was a finding about that the pilot didn't brief the student. Now, here we must just for 1 second stand still. There are not only one briefing before we go into night flying. There are actually 2 different briefings. The one is what we call a phase briefing, and that will be a very big, elongated sort of briefing on night flying. Now, that was done by the instructor that would have flown with her, and that takes a long time. So when the instructors changed, the new instructor, there was no need for him to go through the phase briefing again. I don't think so. But because he didn't do the phase briefing over with her, I cannot see how we deduce from there that there was no other briefing. Because before we can fly, we do a short briefing. So, all right. According to the findings, he didn't do the briefings. I cannot see that was pointed out. I really can't. But anyway, never mind. As the student was expected to be slow and rusted, instructors must compensate for prior to advanced maneuvers. Of course. Take it slow, guys. Relax. Low-level circuits during night flying is not recommended. A low-level night sortie. All right. In the operational world, we will do low-level circuits at 200 feet. First night sortie with a PPL at 500 feet? Really? No. Student slow reaction, you can think that. First night sortie. This must be an ab initio and of an academic nature. The first sortie cannot have any advanced elements in it, period. That's why we get so many hours to sort it out. And I know that I'm ranting and raving about this one, but this, there's a lot of information here I believe we do not have. All right. Normal circus must be flown at normal, 1 nautical mile from the runway. And you will say, huh? So far? It's difficult. But go on Google Earth and go and see where you fly and go and mark it out and see how wide it is. Now, I said here 1 nautical mile. But let me give you this tip. If it's a low wing, then the wingtip must trail on the runway. If it's a high wing, the third of the wing must cut the runway. So there's the runway and cuts a third of the tip. Okay, never mind. If you are flying wide downwind, you have got no chance. You haven't. Hello? So, yes, but I know, but remember, the engine can go anyway. I can agree with you to everything that you say, but the one thing I cannot agree with is, why do you not fly where you've got the best chance when you have got if it is possible for you to give yourself the best chance. That's the point. Okay. Baseline height must be managed. Radio work in the circuit. I'm not so sure. There must be a serious informative there, and I couldn't see, but I believe that people heard, but it's not said what was heard. Use the engine when in doubt. All right. So, but obviously they weren't in doubt. If the engine does not respond, then we must say, hey guys, mayday. Never allow flight profiles other than described in the company manual of procedures. Don't allow anything else. And then the high judgments is always more difficult at night than in the day. Night flying is not a game. Night flying is not a sport. Night flying is a crucial and an extremely crucial capability that you need to move from normal flying to the higher levels of flying, to the highest levels of flying. All right, and on that note, well, let's see you in the next sortie.